this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to this press conference for Hawkeye football next season. Brian and I, we got a game plan for next year. Going to keep things going, complimentary football, punt the ball, play good defense.
I don't know what to do about all the tackles for losses, the missed blocks, the inept offense, and Kirk sticking with the same horrible system that Ryan runs. All I know is that first you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a Hawkeye fan, god damn it. My team has value. So I want you to get up now. I want y'all to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window. Open it. And stick your head out. And yell, I'm as mad as hell. And I'm not going to take this anymore.
We're talking network on the Pot of Dreams.
And now, the distinguished television news commentator, Mr. Howard Beale.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like at this moment to announce that I will be retiring from this program in 2 weeks' time because of poor ratings. Since this show was the only thing I had going for me in my life, I have decided to kill myself. I'm going to blow my brains out right on this program a week from today.
What the hell's going on?
Prepare yourself for a perfectly outrageous motion picture.
Howard Beale went up there last night and said what every American feels, that he's tired of all the bull.
Sakes, Diana, we're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
I am not putting Howard back on the air.
It's not your show anymore, Max. It's mine.
I got a feeling I'm being made.
You are.
Got to warn you, I don't do anything on my first date.
We'll see. I want a show developed based on the activities of a terrorist group.
Well, Ahmed, I'm going to make a TV star out of you. Just like Archie Bunker.
We're the #1 show in television!
We're number one!
There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and DuPont and Exxon.
And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?
Why me?
It was your own television, dummy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Network News Hour with Howard Beale.
I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go out?
You've got to get mad.
67.
You've got to say... I want you to get up right now. Go to your window, stick your head out, and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Herb?
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Ted?
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!
Network by Patty Chayefsky, directed by Sidney Lumet, produced by Howard Gottfried. Television will never be the same.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pod of Dreams. If you listen, we will pod. I'm Ben, here to talk about, well, I get a little excited with some of these. Let's prep this, Eric. We're doing our top 5 favorite, with a capital F, personal subjective, movies you love, regardless of what others think of their artistic merit.
Yep, not best. We're not saying these are the best or greatest movies. These are our favorite films of all time.
Although they might be. This one would be, I have to say. This would crack my all-time top 10 easily. But anyway,
my list is getting close to that too. But yes, getting ahead of ourselves here.
So, just do a little quick recap. Top 5. You started yours off. We did Heat for
The Action is the Juice. We did Heat.
Yeah, I did Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. That was my number 5. Although mine aren't in a super tight order, but number 5.
Yeah, mine could jump around too. We had to pick 5. There's a million that could have, been in there.
Right.
But yes.
And then number 4, Big Lebowski. For you, we did that last time, and now we're my number 4, Network. So I love this movie. I can gush it'll just pour out of me. So I'm going to try to pause. I want to bring you in here, Eric. You said you've maybe seen parts of this before or bits of it, or you saw it, but you weren't super invested. Give me as much of your history with this movie as you can.
Yeah, I'd say this was probably the first time I watched it start to finish and really sort of paid attention to it. I had seen definitely clips of it, the I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And actually, what's kind of fun, people listening to this who are from the Twin Cities area, this may ring a bell. Otherwise, this is nonsense. But one of the local radio hosts on KFAN has Dan Barrero. Maybe you've listened to him or not. I have no idea.
Is he with Meat Sauce in the morning, or is he have a different show?
He's the drive time afternoon, kind of the
Okay.
main guy on this station. But his intro song has 2 quotes from this movie: "The mad as hell and I'm not going to take it," and then the Faye Dunaway that like all I want is a 50 share and a 20 rating or whatever that
Sure.
speech.
Yeah.
So like the lines, and there's clips in this movie that I've sort of lived on. That's some of the most famous lines in movie history come from this film. But watching it this time, sort of paying attention to it more, it's so dark. This is like literally one of the darkest satires of modern, an entire industry, which is, news, is just satirized and destroyed in a way that is so depressing to me. But it's an incredibly well-written, amazing film, and so prophetic to like where all of these things went. The fact that this was like in the mid 70s is like, wait, what? None of this there were still like 5 channels when this movie came out,
Yeah.
they talk about it in the movie. This is before cable, and cable news. But is it dark. Holy shit. This movie is we'll get to the ending, but when the movie ends, the thought I had, which I hadn't thought about it before until I saw it this time, was like, can you imagine sitting in a movie theater and then the credits roll and it says network, and it's just like the lights come on in the theater, looking around at the people in the theater. But I just had this thought. I was like, what do you do? Like, do you say anything? Like, it would have been the most incredible reaction to have seen this for the first time, like on the night of the premiere, and just been like, holy fucking shit. What did we just see? Like, what was that?
I can imagine a little bit, because when I saw this in college, it set my brain on fire. I have no other way to like put it. Like, this movie was just like, I was just blown away with every scene. And I only grasped, a good chunk of it, but there were all sorts of bits happening in this movie that I didn't understand. I saw it a second time when I was a bit older, got more out of it, and got even more a third time. There's just so much depth and incisive, satire, criticism, insight, whatever you want to call it in this movie. It's crazy how, yes, prophetic, ahead of its time. It sees the whole direction that news is going, and human life writ large. That really were
corporate influence on human life, modern human life.
Yeah, in particular through media, but through everything, really. And eventually it sees the merger of news and entertainment, right? Like, that's really the big thing that happens in this movie. Is we see, here's a news program, which was supposed to be like a boring way of reciting and describing what happens, which is what people claim to want, by the way. People are like, I just want the news to be the news. I don't want editorializing. But then realize, oh, we can turn this into entertainment and actually have the news make money. And that's going to eventually lead to cable news, Fox News.
But what's the monetizing authentic rage is what they say, or something like that, which is like, that's literally Fox News, is just monetizing editorial news rage,
So it's Fox News, and it's really social media in general. This is...
Oh, the internet. Imagine what this movie would say about the internet. Yeah.
And it's kind of saying it. It wants you angry and frustrated and engaged all the time because you're some consumerist dot that Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or whoever wants to just exploit. That's all we are. These just abstract number churners for these incredibly rich and powerful elites who don't actually care about anything at all except corporate profits. It's spot on. I can't find anything wrong with its criticism that I think rings false or untrue. And yes, maddening rage. I mean, everybody has this existential rage. We're born into this system. We have no power. It was created before we were born, and you just have to abide by this rule, which puts you in a little box and commodifies you, and it's inescapable. Even the communist gets pulled into it. I mean, that's what's so great. Like the struggle.
That's when it gets a little like too heavy-handed. I thought a little bit when they bring in the communist group and she's arguing about their contract and how many points she'll get. It's like,
yes,
okay.
the overhead clause. Yes.
But the other thing that jumped out to me too is like when you think of this movie now in 2022, it talks about war in Vietnam. It talks about presidential scandals. I mean, this is on the heels of Watergate, which, we're living through these crazy presidential scandals. It talks about inflation as this like huge factor in people, unemployment, like we're living
oil
through that now. Oil prices going, like so much of what they're discussing and like why there is this rage from people watching the news is like, whoa, holy shit. Like we're talking, so many years, decades later, there's different presidential terms and all this stuff has changed, but like those same ideas are still just as relevant today in this explosion we've had of like information and news, but it's all still the same, and I think ultimately that's the piece of the movie that I think touched me the most is like the Beale character, the news reporter, who's the one that's sort of the crux of all of this. Like his whole thing is like, we're all just people, right? Like,
right.
All of these corporate profits that like they don't care about us like human beings, and
correct.
That's what
we have innate value, and
and that's what he's trying to get across in his sort of breakdown. But like that's the part that I think is like you always think of all of these things, these corporations that run our lives and all of this stuff, but like we are just like humans just trying to live our lives, and I think that's part of the movie that was like, oh wow, that really kind of hit me the most watching it this time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just about everything in this movie that's great. I mean, it's about how media narratives transform and infect our way of thinking, right? We have Faye Dunaway's character who, and this is obviously a hyperbolic example for the sake of the film, but like she's kind of like the cable guy. Like you remember the movie Cable Guy with Jim Carrey?
Yep.
How he's literally raised by TV and like sees everything in terms of like other shows. She's like that. She's kind of been deadened by consuming media her whole life and can only see things as scenarios.
But see, that rang to me as like the old guy saying like, these are the kids that, grew up on, this thing, video games, and they don't know the real world like we do. That's what that kind of rang to me. Like her character, I think, is just more worried about profits, and she doesn't really care about humans. That's why she and Robert Duvall connect, I think, in the film as well, is because he's just a corporate stooge. All he cares about is money. He doesn't care about the news.
Is this a Robert Duvall podcast? Are we turning this into a Robert Duvall?
He's in almost every movie we've done. He's crazy. We've like done his whole filmography almost.
Well, he's got a lot of movies. We've got a long ways to go, but yeah, I mean, we've done a ton. Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it is a little preachy, and if somebody didn't like, I don't have a criticism for it, but if somebody were to be like, this movie is very preachy, I would get it. There's a lot of monologues and a lot of people yelling and verbally reciting the themes of the movie. But I think it's all great. I think the broader point isn't that they don't understand real life or whatever, the old man yelling at clouds. It's that he's part of this last generation that was able to grow up without being consumed by mass media, which is true in a general sense.
But they read newspaper. There was always newspapers, radio. I mean, there has been the news, right? It's just
it's not just the news. I wouldn't limit it to just the news.
It's television in general. I think
and it's become mass more. The appeal is way broader. I mean, there are a lot of people in the 20s and 30s that probably did read newspapers, or they would read a local newspaper. They weren't getting a very global perspective, and we weren't all consuming the same media and having the same access. But I think that's at least the thesis of the movie. I guess you can argue with it, but I view that as being really relevant because obviously, I mean, I don't know, I do this, like I think about scenarios from movies all the time in regular life, or like, oh, this is kind of like that scene in the movie, or I think about this character. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just, oh, here's me getting coffee or whatever. But a lot of times these narratives do impact how I perceive things and how I perceive myself. And how we just try to label and quantify everybody and everything and give them a label and categorize them. That's even more true in the internet age. I mean, literally, you get micro-targeted if you do one search, or if you speak to Alexa about, oh man, we need a new washer dryer, you start seeing ads for washer dryers.
We've monetized your identity, right? I mean,
right, exactly.
Everything there's some way they can advertise it at you, and they're using it as a way to pinpoint things for you to buy. I mean, yeah.
And they're trying to figure out what will appeal to you as a 38-year-old white male street guy. How can we appeal to you? And they do this with like TV and movies, and it's just all spot on.
But I don't. The thing about this movie I think it's a great movie. I think it's one of the greatest films. I don't love it because I don't want any of this to be true. Like you seem to like revel in the cynicism.
I don't want it to be true. I like that it's describing something that's true. Like if you want authenticity and thought provoking and like, this is it. This is engaging with the actual truth of reality in a way that is depressing. Although I kind of laugh at parts of this because some of it's a little absurd. I like it because it's describing something that's true. This helped me understand reality better. When I saw this in college, this really helped me grasp with how reality actually is, and changed the way I perceived things, which is why I'm so profoundly connected. I don't want it to be true, Eric. I don't love that.
There is too like the artist perspective of it too. That was the other thing kind of jumped out at me, is like I felt a little bit like he was Patty Chayefsky, the writer, and Sidney Lumet. I think we're sort of saying like, because I mean, in the end, right? He's murdered. Right? Just spoiler alert, I guess, right? That's how it all ends. And like
the movie's almost 50 years old.
It ends. The last line is the voiceover, which I didn't so much love the voiceover, but it's the first person that was killed for low ratings. Is like I kind of felt like they were speaking as artists, like not only like for themselves, but to make money in this business, the things they would have to do to like promote themselves or to sell their movies. You know what I mean? Like they have to this doom and gloom, the death hour, like they have to sell murder and terrible things in order to sell their movies. You know what I mean? Like the same guy that made Dog Day Afternoon, right? Like I just kind of felt that sort of this sort of metaphor as for themselves as artists, not just about
this is also the same guy that did 12 Angry Men, so he's done idealistic movies too.
That's true.
I mean, so Sidney Lumet's got a really diverse.
Is he one of the most underrated filmmakers? I mean,
yeah, he really kind of isn't beloved because I think he was one of those guys who actually excelled at making a lot of different kinds of movies. So his style doesn't always shine through.
Yeah.
But he's pre that
really
like
new
movie.
Hollywood, right? He's a little bit before.
He came of age in the 50s and then hits his peak for a while. I mean, he did the movie Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which I've never seen. I mean, like that's how long this guy was making movies. That movie with
Philip Seymour Hoffman, right?
Yeah,
aren't they like
Ethan Hawke is in it too, right?
They're like stealing money from their parents, or there's like a jewel. A modern movie.
I'm just saying, like he moved from 12 Angry Men to that.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's got a bunch in that I haven't seen that I think are all really well regarded. He has a book called Making Movies. It's really good. Just a movie about the filmmaking process, which I strongly recommend if you just want to insight into how movies used to get made. In some ways, they still are. I like a movie that can describe reality in a way that I would even struggle to like write out everything that the network's claiming. Like you just have to see network. This is reality. I can't write what's in it. You just have to see it. This movie is describing reality in a very cynical, depressing way that I think is completely true. It also made me think of The Player a little bit. I mean, I love this movie more than I love The Player by far. But The Player is also one like, hey, do we sell people the movie that they kind of want? Kojak gets the killer, everybody's happy, everything feels good? Or do we tell the really depressing story that probably is actually more authentic, but nobody's going to watch and nobody cares about? Now, this doesn't really wrestle with that like The Player does, but
I thought a lot about Don't Look Up when I was watching this, which is a movie that came out last year. It's a satire about the environmental crisis in the guise of a like asteroid, right? And like that, I don't think that movie works very well, and I didn't really like that movie. And I just thought, like, why does this work and that doesn't? And I think I think it's because they went right at the issue, whereas like in Don't Look Up, it's this metaphor with this asteroid. If they had just like had it be about the environmental crisis and like how ridiculous it is that nobody's doing anything about it, I think it would have been more powerful. Because like this movie's about network news and like the change and that monetization of it and the power of the editorialness and like the darkness of where we're going with profits and I think that movie didn't address it in the exact way. I don't know. It just made me. I was just thinking about like, why does that movie work? This movie doesn't, or that movie doesn't. This does.
Well, the writing in this is better than Don't Look Now Up. I think.
Sure,
also, I think the writing here is so immaculate.
But
it's almost perfect.
The relationship stuff with Faye Dunaway and the news director guy, that also kind of took me out of the movie.
It doesn't work, but I don't think it's supposed to. I mean,
why is it even there? Why is it even in the movie?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why I think it's in there. I mean, one, you have the generational, you need the contrast, but he gets shoehorned into a narrative that he doesn't want. He gets put into this box of midlife crisis or late life crisis or whatever, sex with a younger person, really kind of against his will, and he doesn't even understand why he's doing it. It's just it's subconsciously implanted into his brain via media that this is kind of thing that he ought to do. Just like how he gets upset about the book. It's like, oh, I'm writing a book about the golden age of television. This is what everybody does. I'm stuck in a narrative in a box that I don't like, and it happens. But it's flat. I mean, it doesn't sizzle. It's not like, man, those people really connect.
But how does that connect to the satire about the evening news? I guess
it's not just because it's about how she can't function. She has no ability to experience actual emotions or actually connect. She's dead inside. Now, the movie's thesis is that she's, corrupted by television, basically, which can be, it's fine if that doesn't land with you, but that's what it's going for. And he's, again, this generation that got to know what it was like to not watch TV, very occasionally going to movies, maybe reading a newspaper, but generally just existing and not have big mega corporations put you in a box and try to articulate the various options and ways your life could go. She's saying, this is the narrative. She said, I've got several different endings for the way that this relationship will end. One of them involves you killing yourself, and you sound like it's all scripted. And he, in the end, kind of catches his dignity. He says, I'm flipping the script. I'm going to, I'm making it happy. I'm going to write my own story. That's the biggest thing I think that he does. But it's not my favorite part of the movie. It's not the most incisive. It doesn't hit the hardest to me when I watch it, but that's what I think is going on with that.
Does the fact that all of this came true, and even to a certain extent so much more drastic with the internet and cable news, does that kind of defeat the purpose of this movie a little bit? The fact that Fox News is so much worse than anything that this guy does in this movie.
No, I thought of Tucker Carlson a lot with Howard Beale.
100%.
A ton.
This movie doesn't even really get into politics. It's more just about the tone, and it's like the idea is what if a newsman just spoke his mind? That's where it starts, and that's where he says, "I'm mad as hell, and we shouldn't take this."
He says some stuff that's true. It's I ran out of bullshit.
It's his last day. He's getting fired, so he just says, "I'm not going to bullshit anymore. I'm just going to speak the truth."
I ran out of bullshit.
That's so minor compared to what we hear on news shows now. I mean, I don't want to give examples of it, but the fact that is it sort of a novel idea for this movie, whereas in a modern society it's he just says what he thinks. That's not a big deal. You know what I mean? In terms of does this really have the impact that it should? Do you not think so? Or I mean, I know it gets to the point where he's murdered on air and then nobody even reacts like that.
It's not just Howard Beale. I mean, he's part of it, right? So what I hear him, he's for a long time saying things that really he is articulating how people feel, and that's why people resonate with him.
That's the whole Trump thing, right? That's why people love Trump, because he spoke like me. He said what I think, and he didn't bullshit. And we need a guy that's not going to bullshit anymore, and he became precedent because of that. You know what I mean? That's kind of what this movie's getting at from that perspective, right?
Well, I think it's getting at the fact that mass media can't help you, but nothing can help you. I mean, it's very cynical. He's ignoring the fact that eventually people are going to use this playbook to, get Trump in the White House. Ignoring that. And people lie and do all sorts of crazy stuff. And the whole political ignore that for a second.
Beale is being earnest, though. He's like, this is how I feel, and this is.
He's not
trying to profit off of it. It's the network and everybody else.
And again, he's saying stuff that I think, generally speaking, we'd all agree with. A lot of these expressions and these frustration, this existential angst. But then he says this like, I don't know what to tell you to do. I don't know, I wouldn't even know. I don't know who to vote for. I wouldn't know what to do.
Don't listen to me. Turn this off. Stop watching TV.
Yes.
Like, stop listening to me. Like, live your life. Turn this off and don't watch it.
And then collapses. Yeah. But he's not saying anything controversial. And the only time when he starts doing something that's meaningful, the deal, right? And there's all sorts of little. So we see very early on, like, I love the way the movie intros and outros. Like, we go into seeing Howard Beale, who's just at the news desk. We get the voiceover, and it zooms in on him. We go into his story. But one of those things we hear is that, like, oil prices are going up, that Saudi Arabia has raised the oil prices. And you hear it at least one other time and maybe more in the background while other stuff is happening. So as we're getting distracted by all the crazy noise, all right, like Saudi Arabia is raising the price of oil. And he gets to this point where he's telling people, you need to stop this deal. They're selling American media to the Saudi Arabians. This is a problem.
Yeah, they already own all these different industries.
Like, this is a problem. Yeah. This is we don't want this. And he's trying to do a meaningful political change, trying to stop the power brokers. And he says, write a letter to your congressman, and 6 million people do, right? Deal gets stopped. He's actually using media to do something. They don't care about him saying to like be angry. They don't care about him saying to turn off the TV. They don't care about any of this stuff. I mean, they turn his slogan, I'm mad as hell, into like an intro to his show. I mean, it's so cynical and dark. Like his expression of existential rage just becomes a catchphrase on a show. It's so frustrating. I mean, in a good way. But anyway, then he meets Ned Beatty, who's like the owner of one of these conglomerates or whatever. And then he gets shut down, basically. He gets talked into saying depressing stuff and not using his pulpit because he actually fucked with the people in power in a meaningful way. And that was it. Ultimately, it led to him getting shot because he couldn't use this to actually transform society. Mass media won't work. They won't let you because the people that have the power decide what you watch aren't going to let you watch something that might persuade you to make them not in power anymore. And we get the horrible, like, I mean, it's cynical, but it's great. The Ned Beatty cosmic forces of nature, Mr. Beale. I mean, that's the thesis of the movie. It's inescapable.
You meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Yep. And Howard Beale literally asks him, are you God? And he says, I think you might be right, Mr. Beale. I mean, in the
scene,
movie,
we get to take a pause. That scene is fucking amazing.
It is.
The way he, like, the lights go down. He's on the other side of this giant boardroom table. You can't really see his face. The camera is like between the lanterns.
It's like we're slumped into the chair looking up at him.
We're looking, and he slowly walks over, and it is like the devil, like, walking up to him, and Beale is like, you're terrified, and he's screaming his crazy speech. Yeah, it's
basically how there's no such things as nations anymore.
Yeah,
communism, capitalism is just a big swirling mass of capital and spreadsheets and economic gains. Is all that reality is. Everything else is just
why me?
Distraction.
Because you're on television, you dummy. Like that.
Yeah, he uses his words against him. It's smart and horrible and awful, and then he like starts just talking about how everybody's worthless and doesn't matter, and the ratings go down, and eventually he gets shot.
Yeah, that whole sequence where they're like, "What do we do? Like, what's the solutions?" Like, I think we just have to murder him. I think,
and they're so nonchalant about it. Yeah,
and they're like, logically that makes sense. Yeah, we have to kill him.
And so he's like, I guess I hope there's not a tape recorder in here. But that's one person says.
Little Nixon shit there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most amount of cynicism of hopefully nobody can hold us accountable to this.
I mean, just not to repeat what I said earlier, but like. The parables between that point in time and the point in time we're living right now is kind of astonishing. I mean, honestly, it is so. you know, as you get older, I'm sure people that are older than us have like realized, yeah, that's because that's the way the fucking world works. It cycles. There's these same scenarios, but the fact that like, you know, war, like you said, inflation, all of these crises and
gas
political
prices,
upheaval, and like that changed.
Maximum distrust of government. Like distrust of government is at its peak in the mid 70s, post Nixon and Vietnam.
Yeah,
were like,
what we've seen
people.
in the last 4 years is nothing compared to what they saw. And, you know, what we see on the internet, you know, the whole idea is like, oh, we might see murder on TV. It's like, that is all we see now. Like, go on the internet, you're going to find murder. Like, you don't need a television show or some like Faye Dunaway is like the Murder Hour or whatever. She's trying to program that as like, we just show people getting killed on TV. It's like, that's the internet. Welcome to the internet now. You know, it's just,
I mean, they're going to
so
follow
crazy.
these ideas, and it's going to lead them to the internet. Like, you can see they're going to keep escalating and trying to get ratings, and like it's going to lead them to crazy shows, and it's immaculate. I'm going to repeat again. I don't want this to be true. I just think it is true, and a movie that is able to perfectly craft and describe reality in its horrible awfulness in a way that's never been captured as well before or since from any movie I've ever seen. It's incredible. And, you know, ultimately we kind of have ourselves to blame. There's a bit of that, right? Because they're like, we'll tell you anything you want. Whatever will make you happy. Kojak gets the killer. Mystery gets solved. Whatever. We'll tell you anything. If it makes you happy, we'll lie to you all day long. We don't care. We just want to distract you and make you happy. If we all liked boring newscasts better, that's what people would do. We'd still have that, but we don't. We want the salacious stuff.
I mean,
so they feed us this slop that we want from ourselves.
The whole period where Duvall sort of takes over the news and he's speaking to the board of directors or the shareholders, and he's like, you know, this is a $30 million loss that we're taking on every year. And it's like, there's that argument with the news director guy. He's like, that's what the news is. The news is losing money. I mean, that it always has.
It's
like
a public service.
Newspapers always, traditionally, always lost money. Yeah, I mean, it's to give the public the information that they need. And that has totally changed. It's all become
because
profit
corporations
centers.
own them, and they're like, no, we need to make money.
We need
public
profits.
good?
Yeah.
What the fuck is that about? No, we need to make money. Screw you. This guy angrily yelling about your neighbors or the other side, that's going to make us way more money.
But the result of it is to where we're on now, where truth is this fungible thing, right? Because we don't have press that we can rely on. Now it's you say what you want, and that's the truth, and nobody's going to defend it or you know, prove you wrong. I mean, like I said, look at Trump. That's his whole thing was like, if I say it, it's true. Like, you know, whether or not I think it's true or not, it doesn't matter anymore because there's no press.
He even suggested throwing out the Constitution. I mean, like, yeah, that's that should be antithetical to somebody who, from my living memories, Republicans worship the Constitution. He didn't even throw it out as like blasphemous, but somebody that was president.
Political hour on the pot of
sorry,
drink.
no, it's no. Well, I mean, it's. Anyway,
but yeah, I think this movie is like, that's the natural progression, is like we lose that sense of the press as a check and balance to power and to truth, and now we don't have it anymore, and now it's fucking lost, right? And that's what's so
Jeff
depressing.
Bezos owns the Washington Post.
Right,
I mean,
the second richest man on the planet owns a
down
newspaper.
to number 2 now.
Well, I don't know, Musk or what, he's up there.
I thought he was the richest, but I don't.
I think Musk for a minute was, but
okay, fair enough. But no, this is it. This is horrible reality, and of course the thing, it's in some ways it's like, okay, no, it's not immigrants ruining your life. It's not horrible socialists. It's not even really Trump supporters. It's, you know, this big conglomerate, this oligarchy of corporations that really dictates everything.
Well, and then the news became the enemy. I mean, that's the other piece of it too. It's not just profits and whether or not news made money. They literally became the enemy of truth, right? Like that was like, hey, I don't like you because you're saying things that make me look bad. Whether or not that's true or not, it doesn't matter. Like, you're just making me look bad, news. So get out of here. It's great. I mean, like fake news. That whole phrase, like, if you think of that in context of this movie, it's honestly mind blowing that that's where we went from the 70s to now.
But I don't think this movie is really a call to action. It's really just articulating reality in this uber macro way. And there's nothing to do. What could a person do? There is no solution. There wasn't really a solution in the late 70s. There isn't really a solution now, unless you
regulation.
If you want to destroy mass media, maybe just get rid of it. Well, get rid of the internet, get rid of your TVs, get rid of anything.
Limit the corporate purchase. Use some anti-trade laws to prevent these corporations from being owned by like 4 different entities. You know what I mean? So that was another piece of it is like the Murdochs bought up all those local news stations. So like with Sinclair or whatever, they all had to broadcast not just what was the news, they had to broadcast their agenda. You know what I mean? So it wasn't just like, hey, I own, the corporation owns these news stations. It was, you're going to say the things that I'm telling you to say because I own you now. Like, that's how dark it's even like this movie couldn't have even fathomed that level of darkness. No,
it almost undersells how bad it is. Although,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. But it gets it right, just not to even the degrees that it's going to go. And some of that's going to be Reagan's going to come along in the 80s and make it really easy for companies to merge with each other, and then it's going to get really
Clinton
merge
too. I think Clinton was responsible for removing a lot of those regulations as well.
So and getting him back, how do you get him back when all these corporations are going to spend $20 bazillion keeping you from getting any meaningful laws passed? No, there's no call to action. It is what it is.
Well, and then the foreign influence too at the Saudis. Like, you think of right now, how many industries are the Saudis just buying and owning now? It's like they have so much money they don't know what to do with it. They're giving it away, and that's this movie touches on that too, that foreign influence, the Russian oligarchs, Russian buying in different business entities. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is an incredibly great movie. I think
I'm glad you like it, even though it depresses you more than you wanted to.
Honestly, it is. It's a heavy hit especially the ending, when the way this movie ends. So yeah, just to kind of close the loop. So the Howard Beale, he goes on this tirade. The ratings are huge, so they want more of him. He was like on the way out. I'm getting fired. I'm going to say what I want. I'm going to tell everybody to fuck off, and people loved it. So the ratings are huge. But then there's this dip because for whatever people get tired of it. It's not enough. And then he goes on this, larger. It goes bigger, right? He goes.
He has a mental breakdown, I think. My read of this is that he literally just is suffering from mental illness.
Visions and
he's having a psychotic break, I think. And they're just like, well, we can use this. We can use this to make a bunch of money. So
it eventually becomes the #1 show on TV behind any sort of scripted television, which is also kind of interesting because you think of TV ratings now, and it's like the NFL is the top 20 highest rated television shows, and then it's
this movie's reality TV as well. She talks about how this is how much it'll cost, and this is kind of rating you'll get. Can you imagine what the profits will be like?
Yeah,
that's reality TV. It's so cheap to produce, and they can make a fuckload of money off of it.
The groups that she hires, it's we'll just film them. They'll just have them film robbing banks or whatever. It's it's basically reality TV. Yeah,
and then we're gonna do fictionalized episodes every week about what happened.
Honestly, are we far away from a reality show where they try to rob a bank and it's that's the show is tune in next week to see if they can rob this bank? You know what I mean? We're not that far away from that.
With somebody having literally a camera attached to them. But absolutely, somebody could be like, I'm gonna run around and try to rob this bank or this liquor store. Absolutely.
See what crimes I can get away with.
The body? Was it Logan Paul that was walking around and found a dead body? Nuts. Especially when you have a billion people on YouTube all trying to, or not YouTube, TikTok, whatever, trying to get famous and looking for something sensational to get views and become we're not that far off from it at all. It's not even that exaggerated. That's the thing. No, it's incredible. Yeah, and it closes with, so he dies, and we get that he's the first newscaster murdered because of bad ratings, and then it it pulls out of the TV, and then we just see this big wash of all this sea of monitors, and this is just one little story amidst all of them, and it gets lost in the sea of shit like every other news story. I mean, think about how many shocking quote unquote news stories we've encountered, and then they just get gone. Just
yeah, I mean, January 6th was like on January 12th. Did people even talk about it anymore? You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
in some media circles for sure not.
Right.
But I mean, you just think about everything that's just happened, and it just moves on. Like, not like Biden leaving Afghanistan in a kind of clusterfuck and getting people killed. I mean, one story of many. Like, that was 2 years ago, and it might as well be 200 years ago. It's just gone. I mean, it's just boom. Like, even more so. And this was done in the era of, like 5 channels. This is ludicrous. Just how right it is, how accurate it describes, and sees where things are going, and sees how the people in power. I mean, I'm almost shocked. I mean, this is a movie that only could have gotten made to the degree it did in like the 70s. I mean, this is just so brutal. Nobody would watch this kind of movie now anyway.
No, it would be like a streaming movie. Well, I suppose, like I said, Don't Look Up was a major. I mean, it was Netflix, and DiCaprio in it. That was a major film. Jennifer Lawrence in it.
But that movie pretty clearly blames the right, the political right, I think, in particular, and a few other media sources too. This one just feels more comprehensive. This is like an atom bomb, and it blames everybody, I think, to a certain degree. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that movie is a frustrating movie because it just should have worked a lot better than it did, and it just didn't.
Well, there's the speech at the end where Leo, like, we had such a great country, or we had such a great world, or something like that. Like, I think he was trying to replicate this, really, with just a different subject, and it just doesn't work as well. Like I said, I'm having a hard time articulating why.
No, that movie's way less than the sum of its parts. I mean, some of it's the writing, and I don't know. Yeah, it's not as cohesive. I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't work. But anyway, this movie does work. It's crazy. It's a big budget movie, relatively speaking. Like, super well written, super well acted, and like it's great to look at. It's just like mind blowing how on point it is with.
But I just wanted to inquire. So this is one of your favorite movies. Like, you enjoy watching this? Like,
I enjoy a movie that can impact the way I perceive reality. Clearly, you and I have like different trajectories.
You don't leave this movie feeling just like a shell, like just a hollow.
Eric, these thoughts are in my brain all the time anyway. Like, I walk around with that in the back of my head constantly. There's just this like, oh, evil corporations decide all this stuff for us. It just happens. I can't like stop it. So it's not really new to me at this point. The first time it was new, it caused me to think and shift. And a movie that can do that can be literally transformative in the way I perceive reality, is going to be dear to my heart. Not because I don't want it to be true. I would love to be able to reject this as too cynical or whatever. But I think it really understands power structures in America really, really well. I admire it. And I'm not bored watching it, by the way. Again, I laugh some of it. It's engaging to me to watch, but it's not like every year let me put Network on because it's so fun. I value the ideas in it so much.
Like, how many times have you watched it?
This is the third time I've seen it.
Third time, okay.
Like, all the way through, beginning to end.
I would almost love to see this in like a packed theater at like some revival house, just to like when the lights come up, look around and just like, how's everybody doing right now? Like, you doing okay? Because I'm not doing okay. I am in such a bad place now after having watched this.
So put it this way. It's like, I get so excited that art can be this incredible, this amazing, that it gets me excited. No, it doesn't give me hope about reality. It doesn't really make me, again, depressed, because at this point, I'm just that all the time.
It's like Doctor Strangelove, in that movie ends with like a nuclear bomb. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this really sucks. Like, this is really dark.
Sure.
And I suppose in Don't Look Up, it ends with, the planet being destroyed. It's that same sort of idea. Like, these type of movies have to end in a really bad place in order.
Well, it would ring false if they're like, he gave a speech and reality was transformed. It wouldn't work. I think
because there's like, what's that broadcast news movie? That's more of a hopeful, like, idealistic view on journalism
that's like
and the
almost
media.
a blue-collar media movie because it's about the obsession with ratings, but it shows you the people at the bottom whose lives will be impacted by a swing here or there with points.
But they care about the truth, and they care about exposing power, and the real reasons, the freedom of the press exists, right, is for those reasons. And like those are really valid, justifiable things. Like journalism, like Watergate, Woodward and Bernstein, like journalism has done great things for our society. Like, but this movie is kind of the parts of it where it's like, yeah, but it's also just about ratings and profits and, corporate control.
I mean, it is. It's in some ways it's okay.
Ostensibly, Howard Beale's supposed to be this like great newsman, right? Like that's his character, right? He's been on the news desk for.
He was like the Walter
years.
Cronkite type, yeah, sure, just man in front of the desk.
One of the most trusted voices on TV.
People have supper and they sit down and they watch the evening news before bed to see what's happening in the world. Sure, but that's gone. And
it is gone.
That movie saw the extinction of that going in the 70s. Like, oh, this is eventually going to be they're going to go extinct. Like, this isn't going to be a thing anymore. No, it's just exciting that movies can do that.
But there was that Aaron Sorkin show. I don't know if you watched it on HBO. That had a Jeff Daniels Newsroom, I think is what it was called. I actually really loved that show. That show was like it was such a weird concept. Aaron Sorkin wrote and directed all the episodes. It was like a year after, so like we jump back in time. So it was like taking place a year, and it was addressing the like most significant news stories of that year, but covering them in a way that like wasn't sensational. It was like real journalism and this real voice of the news. And it was like kind of a novel idea, but I think when you compare it to this movie and what like really happens with the news, it seems like kind of a quaint idea. Like who?
Well, I've never seen The West Wing, but I've seen a few scenes from The West Wing. Aaron Sorkin also, and Aaron Sorkin loves Network, by the way. He said that's the best movie ever written.
Well, I think Quentin Tarantino has said that this is like the best script he's ever written, of all time.
It's a perfect script. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it is the best script of all time. It's fine. I'll go so far as to say that. But
Sorkin, you're talking about West Wing.
Yeah, it's always been kind of idealized. Like, let's imagine the U.S. political system in a way that isn't cynical, that we think, it has some problems and some challenges and isn't perfect, but is really a great way of doing things, and they get it right in the end, kind of, sort of that vibe. I assumed Newsroom was the same. I don't know. I didn't really see either one. Aaron Sorkin doesn't work for me as well as he works for some other people, probably because he brings a little bit of Pollyanna-ish about how things are great.
I was going to say... A Few Good Men was on my short list for it. It's not in my top 5, but that was definitely on my short list for top 5 favorite movies.
Oh, he wrote that?
Yeah, for sure. He wrote it as a play, and then he wrote the screenplay for the movie. Absolutely.
I didn't know that. That's good. That's good. All right. Yeah. I like that. See, I didn't know that. But
Social Network, another one on my short list. He wrote the screenplay for that too. Like that was definitely on my short list for top 5 favorite.
Oh wow, The Social Network. Interesting.
Yes. Oh, incredible movie, but didn't make it. Didn't make it, but
okay, fair enough. That's fine. I didn't realize you felt so strongly about Social Network. I really like The Social Network. It's not anywhere near my tie. It's not on my short list, but I'm shocked that it's on yours. I didn't realize you felt that strongly about it. That's interesting. Okay, I mean, I don't have a ton to say about Network other than, I guess if you're wanting a feel good time, it's not going to give you that. Like if you contrast this with Big Lebowski, which is just all good vibes. Big Lebowski's this warm blanket. I think that says
so much about the two of us. The fact that I picked Big Lebowski and you picked this.
No, our whole list, I think each of our lists is going to be pretty indicative of our various ways of viewing movies and reality. Because you and I've often pegged you as being a skosh idealistic when it comes to reality, and you probably accused me of being a skosh cynical. So, yeah, this isn't that. This is, let's tell you how it is. And we're going to be spot on with just how horrible it is. And we're going to just pinpoint laser precision how and why it's bad. But it's just like every scene. the old guy whose name I can't think of, not Howard Beale. He's got this great monologue. It's like death is a tangible thing. I'm like, this is just like death for a lot of us. For me as a 30-year-old, feels abstract still. But as you get older, at some point, it's like, it starts to have definition. It starts to be this real thing. And it's, I don't know, it's a great monologue.
So do you want to give your rating? Do you want to just give
5 out of 5? It's great. Okay, it's incredible. And that would be my rating. That's my measurement of its artistic merits and personal enjoyment. This is a perfect movie. Okay. It's incredible.
See, I couldn't give it a 5 because I don't enjoy it. I think it's incredible. So that's a half star. The relationship stuff with Faye Dunaway and then the news director guy, like, didn't love that. It's like half of the movie is their like affair and going on a trip and the scene with his wife and their divorce. And it's just like, I don't know if I need this in this movie. I don't know. I'll give it 4.5. So it's close to perfect. I didn't enjoy it enough for it to be a perfect 5-star movie for me. That's just a personal thing for me. Do you want to do your 5 degrees of Field of Dreams, Ben?
Let's do it. So I got to get the gal's name. Let's do it. So I wanted to find somebody obscure. Conchata Farrell is her name. She's one of the folks that works for Faye Dunaway. I don't even know what her character's name is. She's just one of those like journeywoman actresses who's been around a very, very long time. You've seen her in lots of stuff. I don't know if you recognize her, but if I pointed her out, you'd probably be, oh yeah, that lady. She's in a lot of things, but she's in Mr. Deeds, the Adam Sandler movie. She like works.
So she was like Faye Dunaway's she was one of her programming people.
Yes, correct.
Okay, yep. No,
yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and she is a bigger gal later on. But yeah, she's in Conchata Farrell is her name. Again, I didn't know that before today. I just recognized the face. And anyway, she's in Mr. Deeds. She works in the same small town as Adam Sandler. Also in Mr. Deeds is John Turturro, who plays the butler with the like burned blackened foot. John Turturro is in a movie called The Big Lebowski, which I don't know if you've seen, Eric. He plays Jesus in that movie.
In Mr. Deeds, isn't he sneaky in Mr. Deeds? I think that's...
Oh, yes, that's him. Yep.
Sneaky, yeah.
Long-serving butler, and apparently the illegitimate son of the guy, he ends up inheriting the money at the end that Adam Sandler thinks he's going to inherit, if you want that comedy spoiled. But yeah, and then Sam Elliott is in The Big Lebowski, and Sam Elliott is in Draft Day with Kevin Costner, who's in Field of Dreams.
Got any good sarsaparilla? Okay, I'll do mine quick. I went with our guy Robert Duvall, and we haven't done that many Duvall movies, have we? He's in Bullet.
Okay.
He's in THX.
He's in THX, and we've done at least one other one. I'd have to pull up his discography here, or filmography.
I don't know. Anyways, Duvall's in The Natural with Wilford Brimley. Wilford Brimley's in The Firm with Holly Hunter. Holly Hunter's in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Your favorite movie. Okay. That's number 1 on your list, I assume.
I've never seen it. And
Kevin Costner, I think his voice is in it, or he's in it for a bit because he plays Kent, and he's in Field of Dreams.
Okay.
Before I jump to my next thing, I had a question. So, have you ever seen The Hospital? That's a Patty Chayefsky movie. He wrote that.
The guy from Patton in it.
George C. Scott. Yeah, he's in it.
George C. Scott. Yes.
Okay.
I have seen it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but I hardly remember it.
Supposed to be another one of his sort of great masterpieces. I hadn't seen that. Anyways.
Oh.
Put that on the list. All right. So to reveal my number 3 favorite movie of all time, right? That's where we're at. Number 3.
Number 3.
Going to give you 5 clues to get to that movie and see if you can guess it. So we'll start with clue number 1. All right, so this film was originally pitched via an 80-page treatment as a horror movie.
Okay. Unhelpful.
Number 2, this movie won 4 Academy Awards and was nominated for 8 total.
Okay.
Not going to tell you which ones.
Sure.
This part of this film was filmed in Morocco.
Okay. Go ahead. I might have a guess, but keep going.
There's a significant scene in this movie involving a train.
Is this Inception?
That's right. Inception, baby.
Okay.
My last clue was the final ski chase scene was inspired by the James Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan's Inception is my 3rd favorite movie of all time.
It did make the cut. I was going to be shocked if it didn't, but you hinted that it might not. So
honestly, this is like so hard. I have jumped around what movies we're in, what movies have been out.
Yeah, I'm oscillating between 2 for next week, and like the one I don't pick is probably not going to make the list. So it's like,
yeah, there's a big one that's not going to make my list that I can't believe is not on here, but it's not as of now, unless
you had to have heat on there. So
I assume Inception's not on your top 5 list.
Correct, so, it's not in my top 5.
You might pick one of my 2 or 1 or 2, right? Because we're at number 3 for me. But
okay,
all right, go watch Inception. We're doing it next week.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Take it easy.
All right.